I've been thinking recently about modern films that I thought were destined to become classics, but didn't quite end up that way. Movies that really stood out for one reason or another, having a personal impact on me, but seem to have slipped under the radar and never received the recognition I thought they'd get. With this in mind, I'm kicking off a new series called Hidden Film Gems, where I highlight movies I highly recommend checking out, even if you've never heard of them. One movie that immediately comes to mind is the medieval fantasy The Green Knight, released by A24. It came out pretty quietly in theaters in the summer of July 21, with modest box office numbers and very little buzz before its debut. A24 films can walk a fine line between box office success and audience reception, and The Green Knight had only modest success on both fronts. Upon viewing, I really felt this film would be one of those hidden gems that didn't necessarily get amazing reviews or huge audiences at first, but would over time evolve into a cult classic. I found the experience incredibly transportive and thought-provoking, and a few years since its release, The Green Knight remains in my mind one of the most underrated fantasy films of the past decade. The story is based on the fable of Sir Gawain, part of the Arthurian literary tradition. Dev Patel stars as Gawain, who's challenged to prove his honor and courage by embarking on a hero's journey that culminates in a duel with the titular Green Knight. While the quest follows some familiar narrative beats, much of the story does feel fresh and unconventional. Dev Patel brings a maturity and humanity to the role, portraying Gawain's struggle to live up to the high expectations of honor and chivalry demanded of a knight in the medieval canon. Throughout his journey, Gawain consistently falls short of the ideals he strives for, but he maintains a strong resolve to improve and do better in future challenges. The story focuses much more on Gawain's failures than his feats, introducing an element of humanity that's rare in typical hero's quest films. Alongside this compelling narrative, The Green Knight's incredibly atmospheric. It creates this grand sense of scale and growing dread as Gawain moves closer to his duel with the Green Knight. His entire path is cloudy and hazy, mirroring his own internal moral confusion. The sun rarely meets him on his journey as he encounters various obstacles, and he never sees the next phase of his quest clearly. The cinematography is also gorgeous, with sweeping shots of the Irish landscapes, capturing the vast scale and isolation of Gawain's journey. The film's just incredible to look at, blending practical effects with CGI seamlessly, transporting you into this fantasy world very effectively. I found the film very immersive in general, even hypnotic at times, and this is further enhanced by a solid score and sound design. For me, it was really the ending of this film that completely dazzled me and elevated this to one of my favorite films in recent memory. The movie does subvert several expected tropes of the hero's quest throughout Gawain's repeated failures to live up to the knight's code of honor, but it's the ending that recontextualizes much of what came before it and remains one of my favorite, most daring film endings in recent history. Before breaking down the ending, just going to give a quick disclaimer here for spoilers. If you haven't seen the film yet, I really recommend dropping off here and giving it a watch, forming your own opinion about the film and the ending. I've done my best to give a quick elevator pitch for why I think it's worth your time, but I am going to break down the ending now and my thoughts on it, so definitely sign off and turn this off if you haven't watched the movie. So at the conclusion of the film, Gawain finally reaches the Green Knight, but rather than the duel he expects, the knight simply tells him to bow his head and offer it to complete his task with honor and become a true knight, giving his life. In a deeply human moment, Gawain recoils and backs off, deciding he's not ready to die, and that this wasn't the arrangement he had committed to. He falls short of perhaps one of the greatest knightly ideals, willingly giving your life to a cause. Instead, he questions that very cause and gives in to his fear of mortality. The film then takes us on this protracted montage of Gawain's life after fleeing. He returns home, welcomed as a hero, adorned with knightly status for reportedly slaying the Green Knight. He marries a royal wife and is eventually crowned king. But this new royal life is built on a lie that eats away at him over time and taints his existence. He leaves his true love behind for an arranged marriage that does not satisfy him. He leads his kingdom into a conquest that ultimately claims the life of his future son. His cowardice at the Green Knight's challenge sets off a ripple effect of dishonor and misery. He makes decision after decision misaligned with his highest ideals, all stemming from his original choice to flee his fate. Then, somewhat jarringly, the film cuts back to that climactic scene. Gawain, his head bowed, ready to die by the Green Knight's axe. His vision of a future filled with suffering, caused by his moral failings, prompts him to embrace death honorably instead. He chooses to die with honor rather than live with dishonor, despite all the accolades, power, and the royal life waiting for him home if he leaves. I personally found the messaging here pretty profound. A life built on lies and dishonor in that crucial moment can trigger a cascade of suffering, as Gawain continues to act out of fear and not in alignment with his highest ideals. but recognizing the impact of this decision, he ultimately conquers his fear of mortality, instead offering his head with honor, only for the Green Knight to ultimately let him go free with this new insight into the life he wants to lead. It's pretty rare for a modern fantasy film to reflect on themes like the way the Green Knight does. It isn't about over-the-top action sequences or performative heroics, but instead about confronting the self and understanding how failing to live to our ideals can bring us suffering. The film might not have been a mainstream hit, but I do believe it will continue to develop a cult following over time among fans who can truly appreciate its depth and artistry. I highly recommend you give it a watch.